All right. Do I see Paul Mayette is there? All right, so we are here and we are recording.
This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, and the provisions therein is extended by an act relevant to extending certain state of emergency accommodations, which was signed into law on July 16th, 2022. These provisions suspend the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call this meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee on January 17th, 2023 at 6 o'clock. I am Linda Lukowski, Chair of the School Committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Erin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Susanna?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Goldner?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Caitlin?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Matthew?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Lees?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Paul Mayette?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Narissa?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Superintendent Brian Porgett?
Here and I can hear you.
Director of Finance and Operations, Kyle Warren?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Director of Curriculum Instruction Assessment, Anna Bates?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Director of Student Services, Shannon Nolan?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Middle School Principal, Al McCray?
I'm here and I can hear you.
High School Principal, Patrick Kelly?
I'm here and I can hear you.
Athletic Director, Tim Alberts?
I'm here and I can hear you.
For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom, using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting, unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. I'm going to read our vision statement. We are a community of learners known for our unwavering commitment to meeting the needs of all students. Through the adoption of best practices and our active partnership with families and the wider community who are united in supporting the development of engaged, successful, responsible, resilient learners. Students will be well prepared to be ethical, empathetic, and contributing citizens. Oral communications from the public. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Members of the public, the meeting host muted you as you entered the meeting. If you would like to address the committee, please indicate now that you would like to do so by raising your hand on the video call using the raise hand option on the participant screen. The meeting host will unmute you so that you can address the committee. Please refer to the public comment policy language on the agenda when making your comments, and remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. When you have finished speaking, the meeting host will mute you again. The public comment policy language on the agenda states members of the public may address the committee for up to 3 minutes, longer with the permission of the chairperson. The committee will not engage in a discussion on topics raised during public comment, but may choose to add the topic to a future agenda. This agenda segment will be limited to 15 minutes. Would anyone like to address the committee?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay, seeing none, we'll go right to the presentation of FY24 budget proposals, and I'll hand it over to Brian.
Thank you, Linda. So I gave you an introduction last night, so I'm not going to take any more time this evening, but appreciate the elementary principals being with us last night to present their requests. And we have tonight with us, as you introduced earlier, Al McCray, the middle school principal, and then we'll have Patrick Kelly, the high school principal, and then Tim Alberts is with us. He is the district 7 through 12 athletics director, so he will make his budget request following them. So at this point, I will hand it over to Al.
All right, thank you. Thank you all for your time again. Budget season comes around. Seems quicker all the time. So the middle school has had a lot of discussion about what we need to go forward. We looked at a lot of data, student needs. We had a lot of discussions around like special ed needs and such like that. What came out of those discussions and our school council discussions has been, I think first and foremost for us, for me, for a school, is to secure our well, one of the more important things is to secure our math specialist. Presently, we have a full-time math specialist, but she's partially funded by ESSER funding. So I wanted to make sure that we got the other half of that salary in the budget as a Triton budget item, so that we can continue on. She does that position does a lot of work with our math people. Obviously, she's the content leader for the math. She's in and out of all classrooms in both grades. She does a lot of intervention work as well, and it's become a very important part of the school and our school improvement plan and such. So that was our first request. Moving forward, talking about personnel, another issue that has come up, kind of a byproduct of the pandemic. During the pandemic, we had to utilize our library as a teaching space because we had to spread kids out so much, and it was the biggest space we had. And I reallocated the IA that used to work in the library to work with a team of teachers, and because that just was a better use of her time when we weren't really using the library. Now that we've moved out, the library is back in existence and ready for someone to kind of lead the library, and I need someone to put back in there. The position still exists. However, I've reallocated IAs to, as you know, we've now have 3 programs. I reallocated an IA to our therapeutic program, our REACH program, to help the first year of that and to shore that up. We had some need in that program coming into, and I wanted to make sure we had enough support. And that's worked out very well. So at the end of the day, I'm asking for an additional IA so that I can move the IA that used to work in the library, who's been trained in the library, who works underneath the librarian in the high school, back into that position so that we can start utilizing the library a little bit more efficiently. Presently, we're using the library, but it's more like English teachers will bring their classes up there. But we really need a consistent way to check out books, take inventory of books, do book fairs, things like that has kind of dropped off based on just haven't had someone in that position to do that. So I'd be asking for an additional instructional assistant position to reinstate that. The last large item I'd be asking for is, as you know, we put world language back in 7th grade this year. It's gone well. We've been looking at our world language materials, and they haven't really been updated in quite a while. So we solicited some quotes for new curriculum materials, which would entail a book and online tools. We settled on, well, we got a quote for 6 years, which is a lot of money. We decided to kind of ratchet that back a little bit, and we ended up kind of taking that amount. We haven't got an exact quote, but we were looking at a 2-year lease, and we took the amount they gave us for the 6 years and kind of prorated it, and we came up with about a $12,000 amount. So that's kind of I don't know if we've got an actual quote for the 2 years yet. I put this together a while ago and I haven't really got an update, but we figured $12,000 was a good number, again, to get a book and an online tool, online licensing for students to use. So that figure would be $12,000 as a placeholder. That could go up a little bit, could go down a little bit once we get the actual quote. Another conversation we had, just so you're aware, is I had a lot of conversations about a special ed teacher, adding a special ed teacher to deal with students who are struggling to read. Presently, our reading specialist is working with a group. She's had a lot of success, but we're more concerned about students coming up behind the students we have now, and who would support them. The numbers look manageable, and what I thought was a better route to go would be to train some people on staff in Orton Gillingham. I found a special ed teacher who was willing to go through that training. I also have our interventionist doing that training, as well as the reading specialist. So Hopefully by next year, we'll have 3 people on staff that have that training. And that gives us some flexibility if we do get larger groups going forward. I wouldn't rule out going, in the next few years that I'd be coming back here asking for more support for that. It all depends on the numbers. But as of right now, I think that will work. And it'd be rather inexpensive. I think we're getting a pretty good deal on the trainings. So we'll have that in place. And the people that we're using for that run programs. But, if you work in a school and you have special ed programs, they ebb and flow with numbers from year to year. And, if you have a down year on a caseload, say in a REACH program, that special ed teacher has a toolkit, if you will, to be able to work with some other kids and do that kind of face-to-face instruction and reading. So that's kind of the approach we're taking on that. And then the last thing, I put a pitch in. It's not in my budget because it's the district. It's going to be a district request coming from Miss Nolan. But we had our first year of our REACH program, and I think it's been going pretty well. And we have found that not having a full-time social worker for that program has been an issue. Students have issues. They don't pick and choose. Like, I'm not going to have an issue on Tuesday because our social worker's not here. They have issues when they want to have issues. So to have someone in the building full time with that consistency would be great. So I'm just putting in a plug for that when she gives her presentation tomorrow. If you go to page 2, just a quick look at our enrollments. They're pretty stable. Not a significant difference from this year to next year. These numbers obviously fluctuate, and they will, but it's ironic right now we have the exact same number of kids in each grade next year. I don't think that'll hold, but it was kind of cool to put that in here. So like I said, that's pretty stable. On page 3, you can see that I am reflecting the IA position in the requested staffing levels. It's a little wonky because the position, the full-time math specialist exists, so it's just really purely a funding thing. So I tried to note that down the bottom with some asterisks and stuff like that. And it's a $48,620 request. So all in all, for our total staffing request, we're looking at $93,879. In the services budget, supplies budget, the big bump up is in instructional materials based on that $12,000 for the world language materials. Everything else you see that goes up is just basically a 5 to 7% increase for inflation. So some of those numbers have ticked up a little bit. And obviously, I've been doing this a while, and the capital improvements continue to be capital improvements. I know we're talking about buildings and new buildings and all that, but the same issues continue to be issues for us as they do for the high school. So I won't go in.
Al, you just muted
Al.
yourself by accident.
You beat me to it.
Sorry. I was just going to say, so if you get into the specifics of the budget lines, everything else you'll see goes up a few $100s here and there based on the increase in inflation. And the big bump is to 12,000 for the world language materials. And that is it. I'm happy to answer any questions. Or
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. McCray? Paul Mayette?
I am just looking at this and making an assumption where the middle school student activities budget dropped significantly, but I'm assuming the middle school musical is being taken out of that, and that's why. But I just wanted to confirm that.
which line is that?
Under it's the last one on last year's budget. Middle school student activities. It was 14,760 last year, 7,350 now. But you've added the middle school musical below that. So I'm assuming
Correct.
that came out of.
Correct. That's split. Yes, exactly.
Thanks.
That's correct, right, Kyle?
Exactly, yeah. So we had that grouped into a single line item last year as part of the proposal. Whereas for next year's budget, it should actually have two different lines in the budget. So that's why it's shown separately there.
I will add that I just completed hiring a musical director, so the middle school will have a musical this spring, just so you know.
Excellent.
Process.
Thank you.
Narissa, you had your hand up. Do you not have a question anymore?
Same question as Paul Mayette just voiced.
Okay, I think nobody else has any questions. We'll move on to Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you all.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I wanted to express through the course of my budget proposal some of the continuing and ongoing needs for the high school. I think as I looked at putting together the budget and working through various channels, whether it was with our program coordinators or our school council, some of the themes that we kept coming back to were wanting to both kind of reset some of the and address some of the loss that came through the pandemic, and also kind of resetting some of the learning and behavioral expectations that we had for students, and areas that we need to kind of get back to. In the starting narrative there in the executive summary, I kind of gave a high level overview of some of the positions and programs that we've been utilizing, some of the things that I'm asking to move into the operational budget, much like Al spoke to, are things that we've been able to find other funding streams for in this current year, whether that was through ESSER funds or other available funds to be able to address need. And as we look to move forward, those are things that I want to make sure that we can try to protect and utilize, because there are resources that I feel like we need on an ongoing basis, especially as we kind of reset following COVID. So some of the things that are going to be kind of major topics that I'll discuss as we go through, looking to add a reading specialist through the budget process, kind of similar to the needs that you just heard Al speak about at the middle school. We have a growing number of students that are struggling with their reading at the high school, and we feel like we need a way to support those students while keeping them in district and not having kids go out of district because we don't have the ability to support them appropriately at the high school. Something that's been an ongoing need that you've seen several different times through the school improvement plan process is for the increase and addition of health curriculum through our physical education classes. And so wanting to have an increase in a health teacher there. Our science department has been working on developing an environmental science pathway, and we're getting to the point where we feel like it's necessary to have an additional science teacher so that we can support all of the offerings that we currently have and look to expand further offerings. And then one of the positions that we were able to add during this current year in response to kind of a behavioral incident that was taking place at the high school was a hall monitor. And that's something that has really provided a lot of benefit to resetting behavioral expectations, and is something that has been really beneficial. And I would want to make sure that we kind of keep going forward. So those are some of the high level staffing pieces that I'll discuss. In terms of other programs that have been really useful and that I think provided us a lot of benefit. We've, over the course of the past 8 months or so, we've set up a partnership with the Ipswich YMCA and specifically used their Camp Cedar Mill facility for a couple of different programs, one being a freshman orientation that we ran the first week in September. That was a really wonderful way to kind of welcome our freshman students into their high school experience and give our teachers and students a kind of a different way for them to engage and interact with one another, and build some of those relationships. And then we also worked with Camp Cedar Mill and the YMCA staff, along with clinicians and outdoor education staff that they have and work with, to provide a physical education class for some of our students that are in our REACH program, where they were offsite and utilizing that facility kind of as a twofold. One as an opportunity for them to receive their physical education credit, but also as a way for us to build connections and relationships both between those students within the program and between our staff that work with them. Typically for our students that are in our REACH program, we don't necessarily see some of the fruits of the work that the staff are putting in until their junior and senior year. And our hope through putting this intervention in early in both freshmen, and this year we did it as well for some of our sophomores, that we'll be able to see kind of the benefits of building those relationships and building kind of that piece of trust much earlier on. So that's a real hope that we have going forward. Just to talk briefly about some of the department specific needs that we have. So within our English department, they're continuing to expand their book selections and book choices. They've continued to utilize that book club model, which means that we're not necessarily buying 150 copies of any one text. Usually we're able to get 1 to 2 class sets of a given text, and then they rotate the timing through that, especially with our 9th and 10th grade courses, as they focus on a more thematic approach and really dive deeply into their essential questions. But what the department is looking to do is to replace a couple of texts. Specifically one that they're looking at replacing is To Kill a Mockingbird. I think, Paul, you probably have seen a lot of the discussion that is going on in the English community around that text, and that's something that they're looking to start moving away from. For our social studies department, one of the new course proposals that came this year that would have some cost is a world religion class. For me, this was, as a former social studies teacher, always something that I thought had tremendous impact in our students understanding and being able to contextualize the history that they were learning, and having a specific class that kind of focused on both the history and some of the doctrine that go along with the major world religions is something that's really important. One of the other places that our social studies department is looking to start working with is Primary Source, who is an organization out of Watertown, and they provide a lot of professional development and resources for our for social studies educators from across the state. And so they're just kind of a really nice organization that does excellent work. And so that's something that we're going to be looking to pursue, even though that's something that's come about in the last couple of weeks. And so it wasn't necessarily in the initial budget proposal, but something that I think I'll be able to make work in other places. Our math department is continuing with some of the costs that they've had on a year in, year out basis, especially for our robotics programming. There's about $4,000 in costs for robotics programming on a year over year basis. One of the places that our business teachers, so in this past year, we hired 2 new business teachers. And one of the places that they want and are hoping that we're able to support and move towards is having students be able to receive certifications for their work through those courses that really kind of signify a set base level of knowledge. This is typically done in where they've used or done this in the past through school-based enterprise program, which is associated with DECA. DECA is a business club that we have students that participate in that business teachers from across the state utilize for, and across the country actually, utilize for a lot of the business curriculum. And so the school-based enterprise program allows for kind of a baseline certification that students would be able to go out and show a marketable set of knowledge and skills to an employer. So think of it kind of like a micro credential. You know, it's not a full degree, but it's a type of credential that an employer could look at and say, okay, I know you have a set baseline of understanding of accounting because you've taken this course and have this style certification. Within our science department, again, we've really been digging into that environmental science pathway. A lot of the funding that we're seeking at the moment is through TEF. TEF has been working with our environmental science teachers to help design what the pathway could look like, and then hopefully reach out to other entities to help secure funding for some of what we're looking to do going forward, especially with equipment that we might need for some of those courses. I do feel like we're at a point with our science classes where if we're not increasing funding, we're going to have to make some really difficult decisions about what we are able to offer our students. And so we'll have to either cut offerings, offer things on a year on, year off basis, or limit the number of sections that we're able to offer in certain places. And those are, you know, real choices to be made. But in terms of advocating for what I think we need and what would be the best possible opportunity for, or put forward the best possible opportunity for our students, it would be to have an additional science educator that would be able to pick up some of the load that comes when you're adding several new sections of courses, so that we can have a robust pathway, and we can have a pathway that is hopefully going to be a draw for students and families to come into the district. One of the other places that comes up within the science department is also our tech ed classes. With a new tech ed teacher, he's looking at what he has available, and his skill set is also different from our former tech ed teacher. He comes from from more of an engineering background. He was an engineer by trade, as opposed to a carpenter by trade, and a builder by trade. So his skill set and focus is slightly different, which means that some of our offerings are going to shift, and some of the work that we're doing with our students is going to shift more in that engineering realm. And so a couple of the pieces of equipment that he has requested, and I think makes sense through the budgeting process. One is a laser cutter to allow us to kind of do more of that that fine and precise work that you'll see with part development and manufacturing, and that's kind of an area of his expertise. And then the other that he's looking for is SolidWorks, which is a computer-based program that allows for a specific type of drafting. And that's something that that SolidWorks program would have kind of year-over-year cost. Not substantial year-over-year cost. I think that I want to say it was $1,500, but does come with year-over-year cost. Other places of note within our world language department, one of the things that they have requested is a certain type of speakers. They're called Red Cat speakers that provide for sound amplification throughout the classroom. This is something that they've seen in a couple of other districts, and they just spoke to the ability to have that type of sound amplification really made it significantly easier for students to hear the precise language that was being spoken, and gave students in other districts kind of a leg up with their language acquisition, just in terms of clarity of speech on the part of the teacher and on the part of the students. The other place where I think we've got continued need with some potential additional expenses and where I've looked to pull funding from other places to kind of make it work over the past year has been within our visual and performing arts department. So we saw a really significant increase this past year in our students taking our TV and video production courses. And with that increase, it required us to have more equipment available to students. And so it was purchasing additional iPhones and iPads, as that's the tool that they're utilizing most frequently for video recording. As we went through it, and myself and the teacher and Kyle, as well as our tech department, went through to kind of price out the difference between kind of iPhones, iPads, and high quality video cameras. And for the price point that we were looking at, the quality of an iPhone actually was our best bet. And so needing to have more of those resources so that we're able to support all of the students that are taking those classes, and they can have devices to film and at times do some of their editing work on. In terms of small and modest increases that come up in other parts of the budget, our guidance department has additional increases as they kind of oversee some of our like student banquets and events that take place. Those all come with additional costs as the costs for venues and inflation take place. We have modest increases that we've budgeted for, and typically the venues around have been really wonderful to work with, but there are modest increases that kind of go along with that. So that's my starting point. If you look at page 4, when we're looking at our enrollment, the 9th grade class coming up, it looks like it's going to be almost 30 students smaller than our graduating senior class. Our graduating senior class is one of the larger classes that we've had. But as Al talked about, he sees his numbers being relatively stable for the coming 2 years. He's got the same number in 7th grade and 8th grade projected currently. I'm looking at enrollment numbers where I think our more typical class size is between 145 and 155 on a year-over-year basis. And looking at that being kind of the typical class size for each grade. And I think I want to say I went back to 3rd or 4th grade and kind of made a probably imperfect guess at what it would look like, but it looked like there would be relative consistency in class size kind of going back to that point. So the staffing requests that I have, so the specific staffing requests, so I had 4 different pieces that I had there as staffing requests. The reading specialist, I think, is, and I know we're not at that point yet. We're talking about all of our priorities, but I really have that as a high priority item, something that I think is almost a must do. We have several students currently at the high school that require specific reading intervention, ideally provided by a reading specialist, someone with that licensure and certification. I know Al talked about Orton Gillingham training, and Shannon's been wonderful to both secure that training and find and help support our staff to get signed up for that. But I think we're anticipating another 2 to 3 students from the middle school coming up. We have 7 students currently at the high school that are requiring that level of support. And so I'm looking at needing a 0.2 FTE reading specialist to be able to service that. We currently have 3 different English teachers within our English department that have that licensure, all of whom would be interested in having that as an additional section or an additional portion of a section to provide those services to our students, which I think is a really kind of wonderful way for us to utilize the those specific skills and that specific specialty on the part of our staff, while also being able to hopefully keep some of our students who require this level of reading intervention in-house. It's difficult to do that type of direct intervention as part of an English class, independent of that time that's needed for reading intervention. So, one of the questions I would anticipate is, can this be something that's embedded into an English class already? And I would say probably not, because if students require that level of direct instruction and direct support on reading intervention, they're also not going to be able to process the language and the text at the same speed that you would see in a typical class, even in one of our lower level classes. Those students might be working on decoding while everyone else has kind of fully moved past, and they've kind of lost the flow of the conversation and what's happening as they try to work through the words on the page. The second request that I have there from a staffing perspective is for a health teacher. We're trying to put something in place this spring through our advisory, or not through our guidance seminar program for our freshmen. That would be a snippet and a snapshot of health over a 10-week period where they would have essentially like 5 lessons that for each freshman around health education, in addition to what we already have as part of our wellness curriculum or our physical education curriculum. But I think having a dedicated health teacher who's able to provide specific instructions, potentially even specific courses that are health education courses, to kind of supplement our physical education is something that's a real need. It has come up every year through the school improvement process from my school council since I started at Triton. It was part of the school improvement plan that I inherited, and my school council has told me that it had probably been there for at least 5 years prior to me starting. And so it's just something that is a certain need and is a gap in our programming for our students. The science teacher, I had kind of talked about that environmental science pathway already, so I don't want to go too deep into it. For the coming year, we're looking to add a sustainability course, a biochemistry course. We'll be adding seminar courses. We'll be adding internship courses and research methods courses. Our environmental science and wing of our science department has really done a tremendous amount of work at starting to build out a pathway that will be a unique opportunity for Triton students. I know I've said to you all several times that we need things that are marketable for our school and our community, and this is an area that I think we can highlight with the work that we're looking to do. Lastly, the last piece that I had on there was continuing to employ a hall monitor. We've seen, especially this fall, an increase we had students fighting in the bathroom, an increase in students using vaping devices, both nicotine and THC products. We've had significant need for that position so that we're able to monitor those spaces. One of the things I think a lot about is how we utilize staff and how we utilize some of our expensive staff. And for our administrators, I could direct our assistant principals to spend the majority of their day monitoring the bathrooms. But I also think that would be an ineffective use of their skill sets. And that wouldn't get us what our students need in their classroom experiences through the evaluation process. And it also wouldn't get our students who might be struggling and need support from an assistant principal, what they need in that fashion. And so I think having a hall monitor allows for us to monitor spaces that I know many of you have heard concerns about, some of you have shared concerns about, and addresses a problem that every time we meet with students and ask them about what they would want to change about the school, the first thing that they bring up is we want our bathrooms to look and feel different. And so having people that can, a person, or having a person that can help with that as a focus really has allowed for us to start to impact what that looked and felt like. Let me just make sure I pages. On page 9, just to go over the different supplies and services to request. So again, I've spoken to some of this already. As Al brought up in his budget presentation, coming out of the World Language Program Review, one of the things that they identified was new level 1 textbooks. And we specifically want to start with students in year 1 of world language and then build up to those in year 4 or AP. So for me, level 1 is kind of the first step in the process, but we're going to need to be addressing kind of all levels of our world language texts. So we've been switching to a proficiency-based model. The state frameworks have changed and require our teachers to teach in a different way and our students to learn language in a different way. And we need resources that match what the frameworks are requiring. We need our teachers to have high quality resources that they can direct their students to, and trying to do it either without a text or with piecemealing together old texts is going to be ineffective, inefficient, and not provide our students and faculty with what they need. The YMCA program, I would like to be able to continue our partnership with the YMCA. It's something that I see, real value in, both the continued offerings for all of our students with our freshman orientation, and then also specifically for our REACH students with the specialized program that we were able to run. I've mentioned the laser cutter and the SolidWorks software coming out of our technical education, and then the speakers for our world language department. When you look at on page 8, the places where there were significant increases from FY23 to FY24, those are the places that have those big ticket items that I just discussed. So the instructional materials and books, the significant difference is the difference in cost between what we had set aside for books this year and what it would cost for the level 1 textbooks for our world language classes. The educational equipment is looking at the laser cutter and bringing that in, and then those Red Cat speakers, and then also in the contracted services, the instructional contracted services, that's the addition of the YMCA programming. I think those are those specific items have significant cost, but the overall, change to the budget, I don't feel like is all that significant if you're not looking at those big ticket items that I've got there. The other piece that I want to kind of make note of as we're looking at page 8 in our student activities accounts. Our student activities accounts this past year, our spending has looked different than it would have in prior years because we didn't run a marching band. We tried to run a pep band and weren't able to have enough students that played the right instruments to be able to run a pep band. We tried to run winter percussion and didn't have enough students for winter percussion. We've got a small group that's doing winter guard that we think is really valuable. I don't want to touch our student activities accounts as we're working on rebuilding and reestablishing our performing arts groups. Because the second that we pull some of that money and either reallocate it somewhere else or take it out of the budget altogether, it becomes significantly more challenging, if not impossible, to get that money back to be able to offer that programming. And I do believe that we will be able to get back to a place where we have those groups thriving once again. And so I am advocating for keeping that money in the budget because I think it's a need and it's programming that we should be offering our students and that I believe our students will take advantage of. It didn't happen this year, but I do think that it's something that that will happen again in the future. And my hope is for some of it that it happens as soon as next year. In terms of capital improvements, and I know Al referenced in his presentation, we've got continuing in major need for capital improvement across the building. We have floor and ceiling tiles that are in bad shape. We have leaking windows. We have leaking roofs, or the roof is leaking, to the point where we have significant water coming into classrooms when we have major storms. We have areas where those leaks leak into carpets, and there's concern about what might be under some of those carpets. And then we have bathrooms that are in need of significant repair. I don't want to get too far into the facility because I think everyone knows the state having gone through the MSBA process, but I would like to advocate for need for whatever the committee is able to manage to set aside for capital improvements across the building, because if we're going back into the MSBA, hopefully at the end of the month or over the next couple of months, that's going to put us still 5 to 7 years out. And the building is going to have significant need over the next 5 to 7 years to make sure that our students still have a safe building, a safe and healthy building for them to attend school. So I just want to make sure that we kind of make note of that and also have that on our radar, that we need to have specific funding that's set aside for some of those capital improvements. And where we were able to, Kyle's been great about trying to utilize some of the resources that we had, so that we can take away at some of the building projects. But I look at some of the bigger ticket items like problems with the roof and know that there's substantial cost anytime we call the roofers to fix leaks. That's where I'm going to stop and at this point ask if anyone has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kelly? Paulies?
Ms. Kelly, I was a strong proponent of getting a good health curriculum on board at Triton, and I just question the need for a health teacher. Can you explain why you believe that the phys ed teachers can't fill that void of teaching the health curriculum?
I think right now, thank you for the question, Paul. And it's a little bit tricky because we're still waiting on the frameworks that are coming out from the state. Anna can probably speak better to it, but they're a couple of years behind when they were supposed to release them to us. And I think when the new frameworks come out, there's going to be a significant health component that's there, that's going to be needed to be taught. I generally think in some of the models that I've seen in other places that I've worked, there are times where you can have someone whose expertise might go through both health and physical education. There are also times where having someone that's dedicated to be a health teacher allows for someone that might be more well-trained at some of the delicate conversations that come up through that. And then also have someone that has that as their specialty and area of expertise. We currently have 2 physical education teachers that are at 1.2 each. So they each teach 6 classes. And neither would have capacity to add on additional health curriculum. They teach some of it through their courses, but I think we need something that's a little bit more specific and dedicated. The other thing that I have had as part of my thought process is that when we look at fulfilling that physical education requirement, having health courses and certain courses that that might address further health standards are also opportunities for our students to take a course that might fulfill their physical education requirement that does not require them to do the same type of physical exercise and activity on a day in, day out basis, which at times is a roadblock. And we've got some students now that we're struggling to get through physical education classes. And we have that just about every year, and it at times can impact their eligibility towards graduation. So I generally think that having someone that specializes in health education and that component specifically is a benefit. And I think part of it on my part is also an assumption that when the frameworks are finally released, it's going to direct schools more in that direction. I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. It's very good. Thank you. Madam Chair, I have one more question. Can I pose it?
Certainly.
So with regard to the hallway monitor, has anything changed with the school resource officer in terms of his time at the school?
So I would say that that's something that the school and the district are working at, and the Newbury Police Department are working at updating the memorandum of understanding. And as that MOU is updated and changes, the school resource officer's role will probably be reflected slightly differently as a result of that MOU.
All right, so I think I have to go back at that again. Has the situation in terms of the amount of time that the school resource officer spends in the building, has that changed?
No.
Okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, because the MOU is signed between the chief and myself, excuse me, I've been talking, and there's a new chief in Newbury, and we haven't updated that MOU, as Patrick said, in quite a while. So part of that review is taking kind of a holistic look and view at how the SRO spends his time within the building. So so again, the director is no, the amount of time that the SRO is here full time all day, every day. But we're looking at better utilizing his time and energy around the building. Again, for uses such as hall monitoring and the way that that can be used, that role can be used as an asset within the building.
The one thing I would caution with that, Paul, though, is, or sorry, Mr. Lee, since we've been formal with all these today. We have also had training, and we are working on training actually today, where one of the things that districts need to avoid is utilizing the SRO as a disciplinarian. And so their role is to be separate from that. So if we have the SRO intervening, there's a really fine line that we're asking the SRO to walk, and that we're walking as a district, between the SRO intervening in the capacity as a police officer versus intervening in the capacity as district personnel. And for any student, they're going to look at a uniformed police officer as a police officer and not school personnel. So I think that has some potential complications. I do think that we can utilize it to an extent, but I think there's also a significant limitation there as well.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Kelly? Seeing none. Thank you very much, Mr. Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
And next up will be Mr. Alberts.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tim Alberts, District Athletic Director, grades 7 through 12. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss next year's budget. For those who don't have the packet at home, I chose one picture to represent our athletic department, and that is our unified basketball team. It's our newest varsity sport offering that just this time last year was just an idea. Thanks to the school committee and the school in their support, we really created a new team that I feel is one of the best things we've done as an athletic program this past calendar year. We brought students together on an interscholastic team with students with disabilities and students without disabilities, and gave everyone a chance to wear a Triton uniform and represent our school and compete against other schools in the area. And it was just at this time last year where it was just an idea, and I couldn't be more proud of the coaches that led the students, as well as the athletes and the partners. So that was the team that I wanted to recognize and kind of kick off and celebrate last year. There was nothing more proud that I've been a part of than hosting our first home unified basketball game. And thanks to everyone on this call that came and supported the team. It really created an awesome community, whether it was signage, cheering, just in general support from elementary schools and middle school. It was a really special opportunity, and I think it kind of set the tone for this year, and hopefully we can build on it. And I'll describe some ideas I have to build on that later in the presentation. So in terms of the executive summary, we've had a very successful school year. Academic excellence is always first and foremost with our teams. I think when you look at the honor roll lists, you'll see a ton of student athletes. I think the student athletes bring their best, add to the community. We're fortunate we have a very large athletic program with 27 varsity sports. I believe we're the second most in the Cape Ann League, which is incredible. And including middle school sports, I believe we are the largest sport offering in all of the Cape Ann League. So thank you to the support of the district for offering a very robust and intensive athletic program. With that, we've had a lot of great success. Last spring, we had an MIAA, that's our governing body, the Massachusetts Interscholastic Athletic Association. We had a student athlete of the month from our track and field program, and that was a statewide recipient that was nominated by a coach. So we're really happy with that. Also in North Shore Moynihan Lumber, the Scholar Athlete of the Month award. We've had recipients every school year since I've been here, which has been great. We had one just this past fall. So just kind of gives you a little snapshot of our academic success within our athletes. In terms of student athlete welfare, just want to say thank you to Nurse Marcia Terry and Nurse Small for their continued support, especially over the last few years. Certainly we had a lot of and we still do have some situations that come up, and they're always there in making sure that our athletes are safe. And also Mr. Ruzicki, our athletic trainer, partnered through Mass Brigham, has been an amazing resource. He started just last March 1st or March 21st, around that time, and has been a real asset to the athletic program. We're really fortunate to have an athletic trainer that comes in every afternoon to work with our student athletes and cover most home games. Not all schools have that, and it's extremely important. And we're fortunate enough to have that coverage and to work with the students when they do get injured, and to have that extra communication with families when an injury does happen. He's been a tremendous resource. In terms of competitive success, certainly we want all our teams to give their best effort. Winning a league title should be a goal of every team. And for some programs, winning a state title is great. I couldn't be more proud of some of our sportsmanship that's been displayed. I believe for the second consecutive year, or actually, I think it's third, we haven't had any student disqualified for unsportsmanlike behavior, which has been great. Also on a league level, just this past fall, we had 3 teams that won the sportsmanship award for the Cape Ann League. That was boys soccer, girls cross country, and boys cross country. So led by their coaches, those students were the kind of the cream of the crop in the Cape Ann League in terms of sportsmanship. And I think it's extremely important in how they represent Triton. I always say it, interscholastic athletics, a lot of folks might not know what a district represents, but when their sports teams come to their school site, that's a good representation of who Triton is and where and what kind of students go to Triton. So I couldn't be more proud when our students wear the Triton uniform and display good sportsmanship and ultimately compete at the highest and best that they can. Facilities and operations, just want to say thank you to Mr. Walsh, Chris Walsh, and Mr. Ryan Collins for their continued support of buildings and grounds and outside athletic facilities. So, it's an older school. Stuff will happen, but they're always there, and we're able to maintain a facility that's safe for all our students, and continue to get all these teams the practice space and the game space that they need. And community engagement. It's a point of emphasis for every team to engage in some type of community service. We track it. I work with the coaches to make sure that it's on their radar. We've had tremendous success in just one of the teams I want to give a shout out to was the swim team this past fall. It's ongoing, but they've been doing water safety awareness and working with elementary schools in our district, as well as the districts that we host in the cooperative swim team, working with those principals and those students to promote water safety and work with our 3rd and 4th grade students in our partnering district. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's a great example of a team going above and beyond and giving back to the community, which is great. In terms of personal budget requests, so this will be seen on page 2. For staffing changes, we added a sub-varsity. It's a 0.25 addition, and that is, we've had interest in our swim team. We have a few divers that are interested, and we are offering a diving coach that would be 0.25 to work with those athletes to give them an opportunity, and it is part of the sport team. So that was an increase of 0.25 for that diving coach. And also unified sports program. We actually had a 3rd basketball coach last year, so that would be the one increase there. And also the MIA and Special Olympics has established a partnership for unified strength and conditioning program. So it's an opportunity that I'd like to request to expand on our current offering and build more community. And that would be a strength and conditioning program similar to what we run with middle school intramural strength and conditioning. So no extra cost involved in terms of facilities or equipment. But we would have 3 coaches for that season, and that would usually happen in the winter season. So that's an increase of 4.25, but a minimal increase overall salary of just over $5,000 to make that happen. And moving to page 3, it's a minimal increase based on inflation, mostly for coaches. The TRTA is currently negotiating contract, so that would go up accordingly. Contracted services, we put in a 5 to 7% increase due to inflation for contracted services as well as supplies. And officials is attached to the MIA. It's usually a 2.5 to 3% raise for sport game officials for all the different sports. And transportation remained flat. One suggestion idea was leasing van transportation for some of our teams. It's been extremely challenging for school buses the past, I'd say, year and a half. We've actually had games that we literally can't get a bus driver at all, and we had to reschedule. So having those van transportations would be an asset for coaches that are comfortable driving, just to be able to get the trips off. Wanted to give a special thank you to Chris Lamoth in the athletic department. Chris has been a valuable resource. He's willing to do anything it takes to make sure games happen, which involves, on a spur of the moment, we might not have a bus or it might be greatly delayed. Can we transport students in our minibus to a nearby school? But Chris has been very welcoming and always eager to help out. And we had a couple trips that were very far away, and he was volunteering to do it. And those particular trips ended up working out. But having those van transportations would help out drastically until the driver shortage that's happening nationwide gets resolved. And capital improvements, our tennis courts could use a little TLC, and I understand that a request to build new tennis courts wouldn't be a great idea with the unknown of the building project, but a little TLC to rehabilitate, as well as adding a bounce back wall, would really help out our tennis program. So that was something I was hoping to work with facilities and kind of improve that aspect. It is used by the community as well, and also the PE departments for the middle school and the high school use the courts, and Triton uses it sparingly in the springtime, but I think it's a good just safe investment just to bring them up, improve them, just to have a better quality playing surface for the students. And pages 5 through 7 kind of outline the increases, and I added those comments that I touched upon where there were increases in the budget request as. I'm happy to answer any and all questions. Anyone has any?
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Alberts?
My gosh, this group is quiet this year.
Seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Alberts.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Tomorrow night is another night of fun-filled excitement.
Are you saving all your questions for tomorrow night? Is tomorrow night going to be like 7 hours long?
Could be.
I think that's what's going to happen.
I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Thank you to our two principals and Mr. Alberts. We appreciate it. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? We'll have a roll call vote. Erin,
Yes.
Susanna,
Yes.
Paul Goldner,
Yes.
Caitlin,
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Paul Lees,
Yes.
Paul Mayette,
Yes.
Narissa,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Thank you all, and I'll see you tomorrow night.
Thank you.
Great night, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.